The eyes watch me, half-lidded, sorrow pressed into their corners, yet serene beyond its bleak fate. It's not normal for him to look so calm under the circumstances, yet those eyes met mine with an unyielding conviction, as though he waited for me to answer some unspoken charges. I'm not easily unsettled, but I confess, I turned my gaze aside. Harsh cries split the fog, harsh and greedy. I had seen the murder of crows circling the dimmed sky from a mile away. Raven never cared for crows. There were too many, too noisy. I could almost feel his shame at sharing the same family, as though their clamor diminished his dignity. The proud bird usually avoided them, but this time, he led me right to them. "Nincompoops!" Raven croaked from atop the gallows, ruffling his feathers. "Riff-raff!" "Surely you didn't bring me here to meet your cousins," I grinned. Raven tilted his head and pecked at the beam. "The bodies?" I asked. "What of them?" I turned on the middle one again. His body bore none of the signs I expected. The skin was waxen and pale, yes, but unbroken, smooth as porcelain. Around the neck, where the road should have darkened the flesh to purple and blue, there was only the same still pallor, untouched by the mark of death. No swelling, no bruise, no tongue lolling grotesque from parted lips. Only quiet flesh, and that gaze. The men hanging on either side of him told a truer story. Their cheeks had begun to sink, lips shriveling back from teeth exposed in yellow grins. Blackening skin tore at the corners of the jaw, seeping foulness that streaked the ground. The odor, sweet, heavy, and rank with corruption, rose thick enough to sting the eyes. Flies gathered at the sockets and throat, feasting without ceremony. The ropes groaned as their dead weight shifted in the evening breeze, dumb and dead. 1752, Galicia, The Hanging Field, a tale from the Book of Silas Crowe. The walls of Dobrin rose before me, crumbling stone patched with timber, half sunk in weeds. Their gates sagged on iron hinges mottled red with rust. It was not built to keep armies out, only beggars and vagabonds, without much success. Passing beneath the warped arch, the town did not greet me with chatter or trade, but with the rush of a handcart's wheel, the cough of some unseen consumptive, and the groaning of the destitute. Children sat barefoot in the gutter, their bellies drawn taut, staring at their empty hands. The smell of damp rot clung to everything. Cabbage gone sour, straw gone moldy, the mildew of walls sweating with age. I knew this smell. It was the odor of want. Tension ran through Dobrin like powder in a dry fuse. It was there in the silence of the market square. It was there in the lit lanterns, revealing the drawn faces of despair. Even the dogs were skulking low to the ground, as if they knew to keep their heads down. I slowed my steps, listening. Whispers followed me like smoke, carried on low breaths of defeat. The clerk, the void, the gallows. Fear is a poor jailer. It can keep a whole town locked in place, for a while. But if you listen to the old saying, a cornered dog will eventually bite, or something like that, then you know what would happen if fear grew unchecked. Chaos. I drew my coat tighter and said, "What business have I here?" In response, Raven took flight, swooped low, and settled on the crooked sign of a tavern. His talons clicked against the wood. The painted board hung limp from one chain, creaking, the faded outline of a tankard swaying like a pendulum. I frowned up at him. Whatever storm is brewing in Dobrin, it's not mine to weather. Raven's beady eyes reminded me of the dead man's gaze, glinting in the lantern glow. Fine, I muttered. One meal. The air inside was as thick as fog. Smoke clung to the rafters, steeped in the sour perfume of beer and sweat. At the hollow clap of the door shutting behind me, the room went silent. Faces turned. Eyes measured the weight of a possible threat. Suspicion sat on every brow. I tipped my hat, and for a moment, only the hearth crackled. But it was just that, a moment. As quickly as the silence came, it broke. Chairs cracked. Murmurs rose again, and the crowd folded back into itself as though I had never entered. I took a seat near the corner, where I could see the door and most of the room. A girl in a rough apron approached, eyes down. "Whatever's warm," I said. "An ale, please." She nodded and vanished through a curtain of hanging cloth. "Took the clerk's books," I heard a man say. "Burned them, said they were false. His wife begged, and still they hanged him," said another. "Poor woman. The void eats meat while we no bog," said someone else. The words tangled together, broken by the scrap of mugs and the weary sigh of despair, bitterness, and a stifled frustration. The tavern girl came with a bowl of barley stew, thin as rainwater, a hunk of rye bread, and a clay cup of sour fast. The taste was poor, but I don't mind. Wandering the earth, you can't be picky with your meal. I ate and listened. At the next table, two farmers leaned close. "Did you see his eyes?" One whispered. "It's as if he's still there." "Lewicki was a good man," the other answered. "He quietly reduced entries for starving families. He's one of us, the people." "He helped us bury our boy," said a woman, "out of his own purse." I raised my cup, letting the sour taste sit on my tongue. The situation was clear to me, yet I wondered still, what am I doing here? A low hum disturbed my pondering. It came beneath the wind, a distant surf rolling against the stone. The clamor of feet, an even rhythm. A clash of metal, angry shouts. Heads turned, murmurs died. The door flew open, and a man burst through, breath misting in the cold evening. "It's begun!" he shouted. "To the square!" Without pause, benches skidded. Mugs spilled, and chairs toppled in haste, as if everyone had been waiting for this particular man with his peculiar news. I alone remained seated. The innkeeper, a heavy-set man, remained behind the counter, staring at the open door, as if he wished he could abandon his establishment. The serving girl stood by the window, clutching her apron. The din spilled through the lanes like fire through dry grass. Something was coming, near enough to taste. In 1752, across the Commonwealth, famine has ravaged storehouses, and whole provinces had bartered their faith for bread. The nobles stole from the crown from the poor, and the poor from one another. Corruption was not whispered of, but worn openly, like a medal of wit. Justice had become a market trade, and the honest its currency. I had seen it before, in Prague, in Vienna, in cities whose names now lie buried beneath dust. Desperation ripens, like rot under clean linen. Then one morning, the smell becomes too much to bear. This rage, this scene I witnessed, is never new. Only the names change. I followed the crowd after I finished my meal, not before. It was upon Raven's insistence that I do so, uninterested in what was to come. There, I saw grit in the flesh. The void, Jan Richter, was a small man wrapped in large clothes, He stood upon the steps of his hall, his fur-lined coat gleaming wet under the torchlight, the gold thread in his cuffs winking like teeth. His face was red and round, polished by indulgence and debauchery. A bejeweled necklace hung heavy upon his chest. His sleepy eyes were those of a miser, cold, dull, and counting. Before him were misery and famine. The air trembled with their demands. The breaking cry of people too long starved of mercy. Their rage had taken shape, and I turned to Raven perched on a broken lamppost, wondering still, what was I to do? "You sold the grain while our children starved," shrieked a woman, beating her chest. "L.MZ.G didn't cheat the ledger, did he?" cried a man. "It's a full charge, wasn't it?" He jabbed his finger at the silhouette of hanging bodies up the hill. "He still watches us! Murderer!" shouted another. "You've hanged an innocent man! Justice for L.MZ.G!" The crowd wavered, torn between awe and terror. Some crossed themselves, others spat to ward off evil. The torches guttered in the mist, throwing wild shadows against the void's hall. Richter raised a hand, the rings on his fingers glinting like gold coins. "Silence!" he bellowed, but the word cracked in his throat. "Superstitious fools! The clerk was a traitor, nothing more. Lies! He's an honest man, champion of the poor!" From where I stood at the edge of the square, I could read their faces where rage and guilt had married. They had doubts, had they not? They must have believed the lies at first, despite L.MZ.G's flawless reputation. No matter how the clerk had defended them before, they had doubted his innocence until that gaze froze upon the dead man's face. This Richter might have betrayed his own people, but they knew they had also betrayed the only one fighting for them. Fear and rage are bad enough. Put superstition in the mix, and chaos, Raven croaked, explode. Well, he wasn't wrong. The first shove came from somewhere in the middle. A ripple passed through the crowd like wind through wheat. Shoulders pressed forward, boots scraped stone. Torches tilted and spat smoke, and just like that, the crowd turned into a mob. The void stand his ground, chin high, trusting in the line of militiamen braced before him. If I could see from a distance, I imagine it was clear to the people how poorly paid and fat these men were. Their spears were dull, and their courage duller still. Only the fear of hunger forced their obedience. "Hold the line!" Richter barked, voice trembling under the weight of command and fury. He still didn't know how much danger he was in. The guards lifted their halberds, forming a crooked barrier of wood and iron. It was useless. The mob surged again, and I witnessed what desperation could grant. Courage that wasn't there before. But time is the great catalyst. Suffer day by day, and the pain would outlive fear. Their faces said it, plain and honest. Every motion was a confession of hunger. Injustice ignited a fine flame, but famine had given it fuel for who knows how long. The first strike wasn't from the mob. A halberd swung too low and caught a man across the shoulder. Blood sprayed like rust in the torchlight. That was enough. The crowd broke its leash. They rammed against the line, howling words of peace no human could understand. The spears wavered, splintered, fell. When the void realized what was clear to me from the beginning, he turned to run, but a stone struck the side of his head. Raven flew onto my shoulder to avoid a stray projectile. "The blood of the innocent crieth unto me from the ground," I said. Raven tilted his head. Genesis, I believe. The hill burned to with cracked voices and the hissing torches. The shrill creak of a rope taking a new weight scattered the crows. I had already reached the slope when it happened. I didn't stop, didn't turn, until a woman's cry compelled me to. "His eyes!" she cried. "They closed!" The void hung where the clerk once had. There were still a few twitches left in his feet before they too went still. Beneath him, the mob howled its triumph, faces red in the torchlight, tears and sweat running as one. I noticed a man hanging beside Richter, smaller, dressed in the plain coat of a clerk. Poor soul. He had bet on the corrupt and lost his stake. If only he hadn't given Lewicki's papers to the void, the story would have been different. Different for Lewicki and himself at least. The void would still hang, and the people would be his executioners. The wind carried the faint sound of weeping, but whether from guilt or fear, I couldn't tell. Raven shifted on my shoulder, his claws pricking through the cloth. "So," I said, "a witness to tell the tale, is that it?" He croaked low. I turned to leave. Behind me, the hill quieted, leaving the ropes creaking, the torches guttering in the fog. The path down was muddy and dark. I walked until only the wind and Raven kept me company. "Where to next?" I asked. Raven ruffled his feathers, gave a low croak that sounded almost like laughter, and turned his beak westward. "West from here," I murmured. "The New World?" He croaked again. I sighed. Well, I always wanted to see what had changed since the last time we were there. The New World it is. The fog thinned as I walked into the darkness beyond. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more tales from the Book of Silas Crowe. Until next time.